So, Mr. Fukunaga, my first question would be, this is your first big movie, right? And it looks like you have done 100 movies before. And what do you think is the essence of this movie yourself?
If anything, this movie 10 years from now, 20 years from now, should feel like a pretty authentic window into this time period, and specifically southern Mexico, immigrants from Central America crossing 2003 to 2005 sort of era. I think it will be it's sort of a fictional portrait of that place, but there's something universal, which I hope in the future, you know, that, or even now in other parts of the world, the universal aspect of people coming from a place of struggle and conflict and trying to improve their life somehow, and be it immigrants or gang members or anyone else that's somehow in a position of sort of the underdog position and trying to get out. I think for me, essentially the story is about people who are struggling to stay afloat and survive, and what they do about it. And so hopefully that stands up over time.
Okay. When I was watching a movie, I felt that there were some metaphorical meanings or deeper meanings in certain elements of the movie. For example, the train ride or something. Is that, I don't know, maybe a journey of life, or starting your life over new?
Mark Halperin, who's an American author, said in A Soldier of the Great War, he was talking about how a man who's convicted to death, and makes that last walk from his cell to the gallows, has an entire life in those steps. So that you could break down any journey in life, and whatever you break it from, whatever that beginning point, whatever that ending point is, could represent, it's a microcosm for an entire life, because it has the beginning and an end.
Okay.
And I always wanted this movie to be from river to river. Like my first draft didn't have any scenes in Honduras, actually. It started off on the river at the beginning of the film and ended on the river at the end of the film.
You have various cultural backgrounds, and you traveled a lot and lived in several countries. Does that affect
a lot of
your...
homework, huh?
Sure. I don't know, thematically?
Thematically?
Yeah.
I think definitely being bicultural or even biracial, it makes you, from one point, not part of any culture necessarily, so you're always from the outside, sort of observing it. You're never participating from the inside. And I think that maybe being raised like that makes me attracted to stories. What I mean by that, though, it's not just any story, not just watching any story, but watching or observing other cultures from a perspective of like almost as foreign to me as my own experience. My own experience is somehow foreign to me. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to say.
How long did you prepare for this movie, and how did you prepare?
Well, I made the short film in 2004, and it took about a year working on other projects. And then I came back and I finished the script. I wished I would have had more time to do another short film or something. Because the short film that started the whole thing was actually my first real short film. It was because in film school at NYU, you do your first year, at least when I was there, you do a black and white film with no dialogue, no music, all exteriors, storytelling with images. And then the next year you get to make your first color film with dialogue and stuff. And that was the film that started this whole thing off. So I only got one chance to sort of play around with that.
How did the bigger production affect your creative working process, or did it affect it in any way?
It's definitely different than making a student film, because in some of our sets it'd be like 3 of us, doing something. And then I remember one time I grabbed the camera. Paulina Gaitan, who plays Syra in the film, was like sitting on the curb in this parking lot. I went and I grabbed the camera and I started filming her. I got a couple shots off, and I look at her, I look up, and I look around, and there's like 50 people standing around me all of a sudden with their notepads, like ready to do something. So I'm not sure if it affected necessarily how I was doing things, but it definitely meant you're being watched all the time, which is something you had to get used to. It's just interesting. You're being observed all the time, and in the editing room, you're being observed. There's no more privacy in the creative journey.
Okay. We're talking about your director of photography, and you're experienced in camera work yourself, so does it affect your work with them?
So far I've got a chance to work with 3 different cinematographers, and they're all great. I mean, I just did a Levi's commercial with Darren Liu, and then Adriana Goldman shots in Nombre, and they're both excellent cinematographers, and they have great eyes in their own right, but also what makes them great is that there's a definite lack of ego in the sense of they're helping me to accomplish my vision.
Anna was very fascinated by the light in a couple of scenes in the movie, so is that something that is very important to you, the light on a film set?
Definitely. I mean, I would definitely be on Adriana's side about planning our day around the best light. For exteriors, say you have a scene that takes place and there's no trees around, it's just you're exposed to the sky. Yeah. And then you have later in the day, maybe you have some scene that's taking place underneath some trees, and then in another part of the day you're shooting in this opening of a building or something. And you realize that midday, it might look, unless you want that, but it might look really terrible for the outside open air shot, because the way the sun's going to be, and it's going to put shadows on people's eyes or something, and it makes Adriana's job that much more difficult. Then we'll try to rearrange our day to like maybe shoot midday where the trees are. You can't wait for the light to be perfect. There's no time on most film sets.
What kind of abilities or talents do you think are important for a director?
I think once you get on set, it's just problem solving. Like all the kind of creative stuff's done beforehand, or it should have been done, hopefully, before you start shooting.
Is there time for improvising, or let your actors improvise?
I tend not to improvise that much, only because some actors really hate it, but also because unless there's a problem, you shouldn't necessarily be going off script. I mean, there's directors that all they do is, Ken Loach, I think all he does is improvise, Mike Lee, you know, those guys their entire films are kind of being written while they're shooting them. But a film with this much logistical sort of challenges, like there's always room for improvising, blocking, and shooting, but performances, like I try to keep it script.
Okay. And how's working with children? You have the scene with this, I forgot his name. Smiley, right. Yeah. I imagine working with children is totally different from working with professional actors, adult actors.
I've pretty much only directed children, I think, so far. Kids are easier, I should say. Because if you pick the right kids, you just kind of like let them do their thing, let them go. Because you can't, most kids, if they read a script, are gonna sound very wooden. So kids are different. For that scene in particular, which wasn't really a written scene in the script, I just wanted Smiley to, because he's always being shit on by everyone else, I wanted him to show his power in front of his kids, and that was the point of the scene. And so I let him do that.
Okay.
I let him show off. Am I allowed to say shit?
All right, so 2 last questions. How do you react on suddenly appearing problems or difficulties on the set?
Like running out of time?
For example.
Redaction is just breaking things down to the simplest issue and then figuring out a way around it.
Okay. Finally, what advice would you give young people like us who want to be filmmakers?
You know, I went to film school as well. I don't think it's necessarily you have to go to film school, but it helps for the community aspect, having friends doing this and be able to help each other out, especially if you want to be directors. I think if you want to be a producer, you don't go to film school. I think you'll work with different folk and you find people with money. But in terms of like, if you want to be a director or a writer, be prolific. I have so many friends that just did like one-day exercises and stuff, just because they had an idea and they just went off and shot it. And those, instead of the short films they spent $10,000, $20,000 on, it was the little one-day exercise that got into Sundance or got into Cannes.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's just to do as much as possible. You never know what is going to work, especially when you're first starting out and you're kind of figuring out your style. So, well, not necessarily find your thing, but just do. Okay. I mean, don't think too much, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Thinking about what other people might want to see or something
exactly,
like that.
Definitely don't think about what other people want to see. Just do you. Yeah.
All right. Thanks very much.
All right, cool.